You said there's no public comment, Rico?
No public comment.
Okay, super. There's no action required of the board on this, so we will keep Jason on the phone and move on to our next agenda item. D7, update, review, discussion, and possible action on the 22 to 24 administration and information technology strategic objectives. So I understand that Information Technology Division has one update here and possibly an amendment to the strategic plan. So if you can turn to page 62, please, I will invite Mr. Perez to give us an update on strategic plan objective 5.3 regarding the CSLB automated phone system.
Thank you, Board Chair Teichert. The IT division is requesting an extension on the target date for this objective. We have partnered with the Department of Consumer Affairs for this to meet this objective. And at this time, the Office of Information Services has recently deployed a cloud-based solution for their interactive voice response system. So they have actually deployed it first, and we will be copying the same model that they have used. So at this time, they had just recently deployed it, and we are next on the timeline to be deployed. So we're requesting an extension to September of 2023 to implement the new CSLB onboarding process.
Okay, thank you, Jason. So let's see, relating to that request by the IT division to amend the 22 to 24 strategic plan to change the target date to September 2023. Is there any comment from board members? Okay, I don't see any. Any public comment? Okay, may I have
public comment?
Sorry, this is related to the IT strategic plan objective.
Right, there's no public comment.
Oh, thank you, Rico. Is there a motion to amend the IT 2022 to 24 strategic plan objective 5.3 target date to September of 2023?
So moved. This is Cobos.
Thanks, Rodney. Do you have a second?
David Delatorre.
Thank you, David. Any final comments from board members? Any final comments from the public? Mariah, can you please call roll?
Mary Teichert.
Aye.
Rodney Cobos.
Aye.
David De La Torre.
Aye.
Miguel Galarza.
Aye.
Susan Granzella.
Aye.
Alan Guy.
Aye.
Jacob Lopez, approved absence. Diana Love.
Aye.
Michael Mark.
Aye.
Stephen Pinelli, approved absence. James Ruane.
Aye.
Johnny Simpson.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we'll move on to licensing. For the next committee reports, the chairs of each committee will take board member discussion and public comments as they present those items under their respective reports. So with that said, leading us through the licensing and testing portion, beginning on page 65, is Licensing Committee Chair Jim Ruane. So Jim, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Teichert. I refer you to CSLB's Accomplishments and Activities Report. Licensing begins on page 17. In 2022, CSLB held monthly interactive virtual Get Licensed to Build workshops with an average attendance of more than 72 people per month. The first Spanish workshop was held in December 2021, and CSLB continued to hold monthly Spanish workshops in 2022. The workshops are conducted by licensing and public affairs staff and include a review of the benefits of licensure, an overview of the licensing requirements, and the steps involved in getting a license. Questions from participants are also answered. In late 2022, the licensing division moved the Home Improvement Salesperson Association and cessation processing online. These documents accounted for 60 to 80% of the license modification unit workload. The online submission process assists licensees with a way to submit the notification timely and with no errors, in addition to help reduce the backlog in the license modification unit. Still on page 17, also note that the licensing division also redirected the home improvement salesperson applications from the supplemental issuance application unit to the license modification unit to reduce issuance backlogs and eliminate overtime. On page 18, you will see the licensing division's judgment enforcement unit is pleased to announce the CSLB Outstanding Liability Suspension Program was successful in assisting other state agencies and members of the public to recover $50 million in outstanding financial liability in 2022. And finally, referring you now to page 20, CSLB offers a Veterans Application Assistance Program for those transitioning from military service to civilian employment. This program offers priority services to veteran applicants by evaluating transferable military experience and training, as well as education, to meet the minimum experience requirements for a state contractor's license in 2022. CSLB issued 530 expedited licenses through this program. This is an informational item only. No action is required of the board. Do board members have any comments? All right, anyone from the public, Rico?
No public comment.
All right, thank you. Now on to the licensing division update. Number 2, licensing and testing program statistical update. You can find the licensing update starting on page 67. I will highlight a few items for the board. Regarding applications on page 68 indicates an increase in the number of applications received in 2022, continuing the upward trend since the pandemic. On page 69, processing times for original exam applications and original waiver applications are 6 weeks and 5 weeks, respectively. Licensing application units are working to recruit for vacancies left by retirements. They are currently working to recruit for 9 open positions. Licensing division is utilizing overtime to reduce the timeline to below 3 weeks goal for these 2 application types. Staff is working to erase the backlog by May 2023. All other applications are processed under 3 weeks, most notably home improvement salesperson registrations, which are at the 2-week processing time. The processing of license renewals is approximately 1 week and has been since January 2022. This is an improvement from the usual 3 weeks to process renewals that the division was averaging in 2021. And as a reminder to our licensees, anyone who has one qualifier on their license can go to CSLB's website and complete their renewal online. Those who choose this option will have the entire process completed and their license history updated within 24 hours. I would also like to note the number of pending applications at the close of 2021-2022 fiscal year on page 70. With the transition to PSI testing services, we anticipated pending applications lowering to a more manageable 17,000 or so. Currently, we're on the right track, lowering it to 19,758. Please note the total renewals received table at the bottom of page 71. I would like to make a comment about these numbers. The calendar year total renewals for 2022 shows 117,694 received, which reflects an approximate 6% decline from the last 2 calendar years. Staff are working on a survey to be presented during the online renewal process to better understand the reason for this decline. Regarding workers' compensation stats on page 72 and 73, as of January 1st, 2023, per Senate Bill 216, the following classifications now require workers' compensation insurance: C8 concrete, C20 warm air heating, ventilating, and air conditioning, D49 tree service, and C22 asbestos abatement. As a result of this change, staff noticed an increase in classification removal requests for these classifications. This could also have played a role in lower license renewal stats for November and December 2022. On page 76, you will note an update regarding CSLB's License Application Experience Verification Program. As of last summer, the Licensing Division has referred many of the experience investigations to the Enforcement Division. In January and February of 2023, investigators closed 34 cases per month. Before I move on to testing update, do board members have any comments on the licensing update? All right. Rico, anyone from the public have comments?
No public comment.
Thank you. You can find the testing update on page 80. CSLB transitioned to its testing administration to PSI exams as of August 2022. PSI provides applicants with more testing sites and hours that include evening and weekend testing and allows them to select their own test dates, times, and locations. As of today, PSI Exams has administered over 29,000 exams. Based on surveys conducted after licensure, the majority of the applicants are happy to be able to take advantage of weekend and after-hour scheduling. We have also had a few complaints about issues with PSI exams monitors, which staff are researching. And finally, the Exam Development Unit has held numerous workshops, both remotely and in person, to continue occupational analysis work for updating existing exams. Information about the examinations being administered and the examinations under development are on pages 81 through 83. That concludes the testing update. FOD is available if the board has any questions. Do any board members have any comments? Anything from the public, Rico?
No public comment.
Right, then we'll move to our final item, which is 3, Business and Professions Code Section 7068.1, Overview, Criteria for Qualifying Additional Licenses. Please turn to page 86. On February 16, 2023, the Licensing and Legislative Committee considered 2 proposed amendments to Section 7068.1. I'll have Licensing Chief Farad Karagoslu provide you a summary of the meeting. Farad?
Thank you, Jim. Business and Professional Code 7068.1 is the statute that governs a license qualifier. This includes how many licenses a person may qualify and qualifier duties and responsibilities. On February 16, 2023, the Licensing and Legislative Committee considered 2 proposed amendments to Section 7068.1. The first proposed amendment is recommended by staff and included in legislation portion of this packet for the board to consider. It relates to removing a requirement that qualifying applicants provide the board a copy of their current employment duty statement. On February 16, the Legislative Committee voted to recommend to the full board that the staff pursue a legislative proposal to remove the duty statement requirements from Section 7068.1. The second proposed amendment to Section 7068.1 was recommended by Industry Stakeholder Contractors License Center. Currently, one of the ways an applicant can qualify an additional entity is to show that they have 20% ownership in the new entity, or the new entity is a subsidiary, or that most of the personnel are the same between the current entity and the new one. This proposal would remove the ownership and subsidiary provisions and replace them with a $25,000 qualifier license bond. The practical effect is to simply require a CSLB qualifier bond if you want to qualify an additional entity, and most of the personnel for the new entity are not the same. While the idea is simple in concept, the staff believe additional research is needed to determine the full impact of the proposal. If the board directs the staff to perform additional research of this matter, we will include a fiscal to licensees that must obtain the qualifier bond and review how many qualifier bonds have paid out the last 3 years. Back to you, Jim.
Thank you, Fuad. Any comments or questions from board members? Right. I understand Phil Vermeulen from the public may have a few comments on this subject. Phil, are you on the line?
Chair, this is Phil Vermeulen from Contractor Licensing Center. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this morning. Being in the license assistance business for the last 42 years, I have quite a few things to know about the 20% requirement. I don't know if the board realizes this or not, but the staff has no way to verify the 20% requirement for the second and third license. So in other words, somebody holds their nose, puts 20% down, and gets on with life. This is not a consumer protection. As the board did in their study a few years ago that required the raising of the, or suggested raising the qualifier bond for the licensing bond, to $25,000, which took effect this year. The average cost of a home remodel job is over $50,000 now. So even with the increase in the license bond, it's still only $25,000 that is provided to a aggrieved homeowner. So this is a good consumer protection assistance that we strongly recommend. Secondly, this minimum staff time. This would help reduce the amount of staff time that is required to look at this. We also believe strongly that we have found out that barriers to entering the contracting market, if you are applying as a small contractor for a small business loan, the SBA will not allow 20% ownership requirement in for providing for that loan. So it is a problem that we have found numerous times. Also, with regard to insurance, we have found that there's been a lot of problems with small contractors qualifying for their insurance because of this requirement. So there are myriad reasons why we are strongly supporting this. We believe it's a good consumer protection measure. The cost to the contractor would be between 1% and 2% on average. And that is a small amount to pay for such a consumer protection. For those reasons, we're strongly advocating that this change be made. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Anything from Fuad or David on that particular item?
Yeah, if I could, Jim, this is Dave.
Sure.
We're just asking that the board consider making a motion to return it to staff for a further research. We'd like to know how many of our licensees will be impacted by this change. We'd also like to know how many qualifier bonds have paid out during the last 2 years. So there'll be a fiscal not only for the board, but there'll be a fiscal for the industry. But ultimately, it's the board's decision. But that is the staff recommendation that you send this back to staff to continue to work with Phil Vermeulen and other stakeholders to answer those questions and then bring it back to the board, likely at the June board meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Anyone else from the public? You're seeing none.
No public comment?
No public comment. All right, thank you. This is supposed to be an update only. Dave, would you like a motion to the effect of sending it back to staff?
Yes, Board Member Rain.
All right,
if you would,
entertain a motion.
A motion would be appreciated to send it back to staff.
Someone like to make that motion?
This is
This is Johnny Simpson. I'd like to make a motion to send it back to staff for further review.
Do we have a
This is
second?
Mary Teichert. I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Mariah, will you call the roll, please?
Mary
Excuse
Teichert.
me, this is the legal, from Christy Shield from the Legal Affairs Division. We need to actually take public comment before the motion is actually voted on. So I would recommend that you first take public comment before you take action on the motion that Mr. Simpson made.
All right, thank you, Christy. We'll do that. Any public comment before the motion is acted upon?
There are no hands raised for public comment.
All right, thank you. So we have a motion maker and a second. Mariah, would you call the roll, please?
Mary Teichert.
Aye.
Rodney Kobos.
Aye.
David De La Torre.
Aye.
Miguel Galarza.
Aye.
Susan Granzella.
Aye.
Alan Guy.
Aye.
Jacob Lopez, approved absence. Diana Love.
Aye.
Michael Mark.
Aye.
Stephen Pinelli, approved absence. James Ruane.
Aye.
Johnny Simpson.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Mariah. This concludes the licensing items on the agenda. Thank you, Chair Teichert, and back to you.
Thank you very much, Jim. I appreciate that. So we'll turn now to enforcement. This section of our agenda begins on page 87, and I would like to turn it over to Enforcement Committee Chair Michael Mark.
All right, thank you, Mary. Good morning. My name is Michael Mark, and I'm the chair of CSLB's Enforcement Committee. The first item on the enforcement agenda is the item F1, which is Enforcement Division's contributions to the recently published 2022 Accomplishments and Activities Report. If you first turn to page 25 of the A&A report, you'll find a brief summary of the impressive work done by Enforcement Division staff during the previous year. Here are just a few of the highlights. There was 20,563 complaint investigations that were completed. The report incorrectly lists this number as 25,539, but staff have confirmed that that was an error. There was 29.4 million in restitution and corrected work that was recovered for consumers. There was 3,710 administrative legal actions that were brought against violators, which was a 32% increase over the previous year, and 891 cases were referred to local prosecutors for criminal prosecution due to misconduct. 2 of these criminal cases are highlighted on the following pages of the report, and I'm pleased to see that Enforcement Division continues to prioritize actions against predatory contractors. For example, on page 26 of the accomplishments report, you can read about the investigation and successful prosecution of unlicensed contractor Shenandoah Johnson. With 8 prior felonies and 10 misdemeanor convictions, Johnson began victimizing Siskiyou County consumers in March of 2020. He eventually defrauded approximately 24 people, most of whom were elderly. He approached the victims and offered to complete roof or driveway repairs, which falsely claiming to be a licensed contractor. He extracted large payments from his victims in advance and did little or no work before disappearing. Special investigators from CSLB Swift Unit worked closely with the DA's office, with additional help from the Franchise Tax Board, to determine Johnson paid no taxes on over $500,000 of income. In November of 2021, Johnson was arrested in Butte County, then extradited to Siskiyou County to stand trial. While in custody at the Siskiyou County Jail, Johnson filed a fraudulent claim for welfare benefits. At the end of the trial, a jury convicted him of 38 felonies, including first-degree burglary, grand theft from an elder, diversion of construction funds, extortion, failure to file a tax return, perjury, welfare fraud, conspiracy, failure to appear in court, and fraudulent use of a construction contractor's license number. He was also convicted of 16 misdemeanor charges. On August 30th, 2022, he was sentenced to 22 years and 8 months in state prison. On page 27 of the report, you can read about licensed contractor Shiramonte Construction and Plumbing, comprised of Salvador and Pamela Shiramonte and their daughter Amy Perry. The trio victimized dozens of homeowners in the aftermath of the devastating 2017 Tubbs fire, which killed 22 people and destroyed 4,600 homes in the Santa Rosa area. The Shiramontes signed contracts with approximately 40 wildfire survivors who had either lost their homes or suffered severe damage. Several of these victims were over the age of 65. Victims complained of paying money for work that were either poorly done or not done at all. The combined losses were estimated at $2 million. CSLB's investigation was handled by a peace officer with the Board Special Investigation Unit, who worked closely with the Sonoma County DA's office to assemble this complex case, which resulted in charges of grand theft, diversion of funds, theft by false pretenses, and elder abuse. On February 14, 2023, Salvador received the heftiest sentence after he pleaded guilty to 13 felony counts of diverting construction funds and 1 felony count of elder abuse. He was sentenced to 3 years in prison. Perry pleaded guilty to 1 felony count of diverting funds and was sentenced to 180 days in a work release program. Her sentence will include 3 consecutive weekends in custody beginning March 17. Pamela Shiramonte was sentenced to 60 days of work release after she pleaded guilty to a misdemeanor count of diversion of funds. The Shiramontes were also ordered to pay a total of $1.19 million in restitution to 16 families. This concludes my update on the Enforcement Division's portion of the 2022 A&A report. This is an information-only item, and there's no action required by the board. First, I will ask, is there any comments from board members? And I'm not seeing any hands being raised. Rico, is there any public comment?
No public comment.
Okay, thank you. At this point, I will turn it over to Steve Grove. He will be reporting on section F2 of the Enforcement Program Statistical Update.
Thank you, Michael, and good morning, everyone. This section begins on page 92 of your board packet. The first highlight I would like to share is on page 94 and details the highly successful investigation and prosecution of Southern California solar contractor EcoSolar. A CSLB peace officer received information in late 2018 from the Los Angeles City Attorney's Office regarding possible construction fraud. The primary suspect was identified as Jose Solis, owner of EcoSolar Home Improvement. The CSLB investigator worked with the Los Angeles City Attorney's Office to conduct an unfair business practice investigation, also known as a Business and Professions Code 17200 case. This is a unique situation where a civil case is filed against someone for committing criminal offenses, with the goal of obtaining a civil judgment which can be awarded to both the victims and the prosecuting agency. A 17200 case is usually filed in lieu of a criminal case, but they can both be pursued since one is civil and the other is criminal. The victims and the EcoSolar complaints were approached by EcoSolar's unregistered salespeople who solicited for construction business going door to door, while EcoSolar representatives would also approach homeowners at locations where they might go to pay utility bills. EcoSolar also advertised as a solar and home improvement contractor in magazines and flyers and on the radio, targeting Spanish speakers, making numerous false claims. The unsuspecting homeowners entered into contracts with EcoSolar for garage conversions into accessory dwelling units, ADUs, home additions, extensive exterior and interior remodeling, and other home improvements. EcoSolar salespersons processed PACE loan applications on behalf of the homeowners with minimal or no explanation of the financing terms, and in some cases without the consent of the homeowners. PACE funds would be dispersed to the contractor performing the work and not to the homeowners liable to repay the loan. Upon submitting the financing application, EcoSolar personnel would submit a false certification of completion, attesting that the work had been completed without consent from the homeowners. This way, EcoSolar secured collecting the funds when the work had not yet commenced. In at least 3 cases where the homeowners paid for their projects in cash, Solis unlawfully requested extremely high deposits. In these cases, Solis performed minimal demolition work and collected thousands of dollars in cash from the homeowners. Cash payments were made directly to Solis, EcoSolar Plus, a company owned by Solis, and Edgemont Construction, a partnership between Solis and licensed contractor Edgar Montepique. Montepique allowed Solis to use his contractor's license for a fee of $10,000 per month. EcoSolar collected at least $1.5 million from PACE funds and approximately $200,000 in cash payments from the homeowners. None of the projects were finished. In July of 2022, approximately 100 of the victims were awarded $2.2 million in restitution from a Los Angeles judge. However, CSLB's enforcement efforts did not stop there. Investigators submitted the case to the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office in December 2022, alleging violations of grand theft, diversion of construction funds, conspiracy, fraudulent use of the contractor's license, and acting in the capacity of a contractor without a license. As far as breaking news, last week, CSLB issued a press release regarding the conviction of one of our most wanted, Aiden Rivas. The Modesto man who is on the CSLB most wanted list has been sentenced to state prison again for charges related to unlicensed contracting. A Contra Costa County judge sentenced 42-year-old Aiden Contreras Rivas to 7 years and 8 months in state prison on March 10 after he was convicted in February of multiple felonies and misdemeanors related to unlicensed contracting, fraud, theft, and failing to obtain workers' compensation insurance. Rivas was invited to a CSLB sting conducted in October of 2022 with the Contra Costa County DA's office and the California Department of Insurance, targeting unlicensed contractors. Prior to his offenses in Contra Costa County, Rivas had served time in state prison for several related felony and misdemeanor convictions for grand theft, theft from an elder, and contracting without a license in Santa Clara County. Next, I would like to provide a statistical overview of Enforcement Division, which begins on page 96 of your board packet. During the 4-month period from October 1st, 2022 to January 31st, 2023, the division initiated 6,597 investigations. With current staffing levels, the optimum maximum caseload is 4,210 pending complaints. As of January 2023, the pending caseload was significantly higher at 5,570. A major contributor to this increased caseload is the drastic increase in solar complaints, which are currently averaging approximately 200 per month. Investigators in the Enforcement Division are working very hard to keep up with the incoming complaints. The weighted monthly case closing average per special investigator in investigative centers was 9 closures per month, just one less than the goal of 10. Another board goal is to appropriately disposition all but 100 complaints within 270 days of receipt. As of January 31st, 2023, 283 complaints exceeded 270 days in age. I'm pleased to report that this number has dropped down to 243 as of March 1st. I've discussed with Chair Mark a proposed enforcement committee meeting in late April of 2023 to discuss the possible need for enforcement process changes to enable enforcement staff to continue to timely work the more egregious consumer complaints. Highlights of some of the division's significant accomplishments between October 1st, 2022 and January 31st, 2023 are as follows. Complaint mediation efforts by the Intake Mediation Center and investigative centers resulted in more than $9 million in restitution to financially injured parties. The investigative centers referred 270, or 21%, of the 1,300 legal action investigations for criminal prosecution. 187 cases referred to arbitration, resulting in over $1 million in restitution ordered to injured parties. 283 licensee citations were issued, 250 non-licensed citations issued, $785,000 of civil penalties collected, over $200,000 in restitution paid to injured parties, $212,000 collected for investigation cost recovery, 68 accusations were filed, and 70 licenses were revoked. And finally, I'll provide a brief update on proactive enforcement, which is conducted by the 27 special investigators assigned to the Statewide Investigative Fraud Team, or SWIFT. This information begins on page 98 of your board packet. From October 1st, 2022 to January 31st, 2023, SWIFT conducted 6 undercover sting operations across the state, participated in 109 sweep days, and responded to over 300 leads or tips received from industry and the public. Investigators closed 1,157 cases as a result of the operations, with 330 cases resulting in an administrative or criminal legal action. Additionally, over 400 advisory notices were issued for relatively minor violations. That concludes the enforcement program statistical update.
All right, Steve, thank you. Great report. This is an information-only item. No action is required by the board. Are there any comments from board members on the report given by Steve? Rico, is there any public comment?
No public comment.
I will just say one thing. Of the total CSLB staff that was recognized at the beginning of the meeting for announcements and achievements and awards, a lot of those members were from the enforcement staff and the SWIFT team. So I do want to give them a shout out there. Overall, they're with the limited staff, and you see the amount of complaints that are kind of backlogged. We're enforcement staff is doing everything they can to get that number back to the goals. And we look forward to hearing that on this April meeting that's coming up. So Steve, we're going to move it back to you, which is the final agenda item F3, which is an update on CSLB's Solar Energy System Restitution Program. The update begins on page 102 of your board packet. And Chief Grove, back to you.
Thank you, Michael. CSLB Solar Energy System Restitution Program was created in 2021 by Assembly Bill 137. The program was designed to provide financial restitution to homeowners of single-family residences who were financially harmed by a solar contractor because of fraud, misrepresentation, or other unlawful acts, such as poor workmanship or abandonment, and who do not have available reimbursement from another source. AB 137 included a $5 million appropriation to CSLB from the state's general fund. Of those funds, $4 million was made available for restitution, and if needed, up to $1 million was allocated to pay for CSLB administrative costs. The program became fully operational in late 2021 and has been extremely well received by the victims of solar-related fraud. Due to recent and ongoing publicity, activity in the program has increased substantially. As of March 20, 2023, staff reports the following stats: 594 claims received, 230 claims approved, $2.9 million approved for payment, 139 pending claims. Additional information regarding the Solar Restitution Fund and proposed PACE Recovery Fund will be discussed by the Legislative Committee. This concludes the enforcement program update.
All right, thank you, Chief Grove. This was an informational only item. No action is required by the board. Are there any comments from the board members?
Yes, this is Susan. I have a question. When it was instituted, there was discussion and possibility of having it continue, but it looks like we just wanted to know, what are the next steps to ensure that AB 137 and whatever form it takes in the future to fund it, what are our next steps in that, other than, and I hope it's going to be included in your enforcement committee meeting.
Thank you. I'm going to refer that comment to, or that question to Registrar Foad.
Good. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Board Member Granzella. We are routinely meeting with the Public Utility Commission and Department of Financial Protection and Innovation about avenues that we could use to continue to fund a recovery fund. Now, where it's at today, you're going to hear a presentation a little bit later this morning regarding a PACE recovery fund. And one thought is, if that PACE recovery fund was to receive support, it could have a bridge. It could provide additional funding for our solar recovery fund. I think, as Steve mentioned, it's troubling that we did have to cut off claims at the end of 2022. Subsequent to that, we received, last I heard, over 128 claims, even after we cut it off. So they're still coming in. The fund itself is not sufficient for all the claims that are currently being completed. So there's different avenues that we're looking at. That would be up to Enforcement Chair Michael Mark, if he'd like to explore that more in April. It'd be something I would certainly support, the different possibilities to continue to have a solar recovery fund.
Thank you.
Yeah, Registrar folk, let's talk offline, I guess, on making that a possible agenda item. I know that solar and the restitution program has been doing great work for the consumers, and unfortunately, there just wasn't enough funding to help all the consumers who were wrongly taken advantage of. With that answers, board, any other board member comments? Rico, is there any other public comments?
Yes, Lisa Batista, you can unmute and speak.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Lisa Batista. I'm here to advocate for the allocation of additional funds to the solar restitution program to help homeowners who have fallen victim to solar panel scams. I'm an attorney with the Senior Law Project in Modesto and the director of our foreclosure prevention program. I have a stack of files on my desk where homeowners are seeking our help in getting out of a solar lien, and I'd like to briefly tell the story of one of my clients. This story contains a number of troubling elements, and each of those elements is repeated numerous times across my other files. The story is this. A salesperson knocks on doors, often in areas with a lot of Spanish-speaking homeowners, and talks people into buying a solar system. In the case of this particular client, showing them a price tag of $9,000 and promising that they'll receive tax credits that offset most or all of that cost. The solar system is installed and the local utility comes out and does an inspection. The system fails the inspection and often never actually works. By this point, the salesperson and his company are nowhere to be found and can never be reached again. Sometime later, the homeowner discovers that there's a contract to which somebody has affixed their electronic signature that, in the case of this particular client, finances the $9,000 investment over 30 years for a total of $30,000 and places a lien in that amount on their home. The lien is paid off through an assessment in the homeowner's twice yearly property taxes, which the homeowner might not even see if they have a mortgage and the lender pays their property taxes. It's a super priority lien that gets in line ahead of their first mortgage and makes it very difficult to refinance or sell their home. By the time the homeowner figures out what has happened, the solar company has gone out of business, the tax credits have never materialized, and the homeowner is left with almost no options. We were very excited to discover the CSLB solar restitution program, but as soon as we submitted our first application, we received notification that the program's funds had been depleted. And so we're here to advocate in whatever way is possible for more funding for that program. There are a lot of people here in the Central Valley alone who are stuck with a crippling super priority lien and a solar system that never worked. The CSLB enforcement arm has, as we've just heard, more cases than it can investigate and prosecute, and the homeowner has nowhere else to turn. Thank you for your time. I'm happy to answer any questions, and I'll leave you my phone number if anyone has any questions. It is area code 209-577-3814. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lisa. Rico, is there any other public comment?
Yes. Alan, you can unmute and you can speak.
I just want to reiterate that some of these houses, like myself, you know, they started project, they did demolition and exposed the property, or my property, you know, to, you know, certain weather like what we're going through right now. So I had to run around and try to tarp the house for the rear. I could send you photos. And if you want, but some of us is like we're up in debt with loans and like these Eco Solar. I'm pretty sure you guys are aware of it. His name is Nelson Solis, and they try to file bankruptcy to avoid prosecution or run away with the money. I just want to, see if you guys can help us out. I'm not the only one. There's quite a few of us. Thank you.
Thank you. If you could please put your email in the chat, someone with staff will contact you. Rico, is there any other public comment?
Yes. Danny Kondo Kaiser, you can unmute and speak. Danny, we've sent you a request to unmute. All right, we'll give Danny a chance to, and we'll get back with Danny. Oh, I'm sorry, there they are. Go ahead, Danny.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
My apologies. I interfacing between the WebEx and my phone here. My name is Danny Kando Kaiser. I'm a policy advocate for the California Low Income Consumer Coalition and the National Consumer Law Center, as well as working with the many members of the Clean Energy Justice Coalition. Just wanted to express our gratitude for the ongoing conversation with the CSLB and the work that they've put into assisting homeowners so far in the state of California. We would urge that this group seriously consider continued funding, since again, as we've heard, there are so many more homeowners within the state who are in bad need of restitution. And again, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Rico, is there any other public comment?
Yes, Josh Buswell, you can unmute and speak.
Hi, this is Josh Buswell-Charco. I'm the Deputy Director at the California Solar and Storage Association. I just wanted to put in the chat, we have a consumer protection hotline that for any of either the legal aid groups or for any consumers that are on the line who have had problems with solar contractors, you can complete that form and we can do our best to help you as well. I can't make any promises, but we have been able to resolve disputes in the past. We've also been able to, get some contractors to essentially adopt fostered systems as well. So again, I put it in the chat. It's calsa.org/consumer-protection-hotline. And there's also a link to a Spanish language form if folks want to fill that out. And I'm happy to do whatever I can to help as well. I'll also put my email in the chat. Thank you.
Hey, Josh. Rico, is there any other public comment?
Yes, Martha, you can unmute and speak. Looks like we've lost Martha's audio. I will let you know if we get her back.
Okay. Is there any other public comment when we can get back to Martha?
No other public comment.
And okay, thank you. Just for reference, as what's been reported today on the enforcement committee, a lot of these complaints are in fact solar related complaints, and that is why there is the big pool was on the solar restitution fund. Those funds were depleted so quickly is because of this industry as a whole, and there's 2 or 3 real bad apples. With that, Steve, did you have any other comments? And register folk, just to make sure I'm aware and clear, there is later on in today's agenda, there is some possible recommendations coming from the legislative committee on how to fund this program, correct?
There is an agenda item that will discuss creating a PACE recovery fund that could also include funding for our existing solar recovery fund. And that's under the legislative committee.
Okay, thank you. And then per conversations, we'll bring this up as maybe another update in our April committee meeting. So, okay. With that, Chair Tykert, seeing no other, is Martha back? Rika, maybe we'll give Martha another chance.
Martha has her hand raised, but I do not have a way to unmute. Looks like we've lost audio. Martha, can you try speaking, see if we can hear you? Yeah, there's no microphone icon next to Martha's name, so I think somehow the device she's on, the microphone, is not working.
Okay, thank you, Rico. So with that, Martha, if you have a way to send it in a chat message, that would be great. Otherwise, Chair Tykert, that concludes our enforcement items on the agenda today, and back to you.
Thank you, Michael. Before we start item G, public affairs, we'll take a 5-minute break. Well, actually 6 minutes. So it's 9:54. We'll reconvene exactly at 10 a.m. We'll be on break for a few minutes.